Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Midday Marketing. And for those who are on Facebook and just heard my stomach rumble, I apologise. The AFL show, I guess we have to say, well, West Coast won, so that's a good thing. And Dockers are playing today, and they'll probably lose, but that's okay. So there's there's at least some sort of follow-up from the AFL show to our show. But today, probably something that the Dockers actually do need, a life coach, change their mentality. Nigel Tye, welcome to Midday Marketing.
Thank you for the invite.
Look, pleasure to have you. So, Nigel, if you wouldn't mind, could you just give us that 30-second blurb about what you do and how you've ended up to doing what you're doing now?
Yes, certainly. Well, I'm a personal life coach and mentor. So I work with people who want to move forward in their life, have got a few blockages that they're trying to deal with and don't know how. They've had a hiccup in their life, whether it be a relationship or career or personal circumstances. And I work with them to help them change their beliefs and moving forward with purpose. So that's the crux of what I do. I'm also an NLP practitioner, actually currently doing my master's, and actually a conscious hypnotist as well. So there's umpteen tools really, plus my life experience to use to try and help people move forward.
Okay, so there's two questions. Is what the heck's NLP?
Neuro-linguistic programming.
Okay.
So it's looking at how the unconscious mind works. It's almost like the DOS computer system in the back of your brain that actually regulates most of the things that you do. And it's been pre-conditioned throughout your life of the way that your parents were, what you've learned, how your life has been. And that's how you create your norm.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that those beliefs and those structures can't be amended like any computer program. You go in and just change the wires a little bit and hopefully come out with a better result.
All right, look, I don't normally do this, but because I know your background and you've just swept a lot of stuff under the rug. So do you mind just giving my listeners a little bit more of your CV? Because it's actually a lot more impressive than what you kind of just talked about.
Well, you only asked for 30 seconds.
I did?
Basically, I served in the British Royal Air Force for 25 years as a medic, like a paramedic. So I did a lot of work out there, whether it be in a GP practice as my home job on a base, or whether when we were deployed overseas, I was working out the back of helicopters being a first responder to pick up on battlefields, or transporting patients between battlefield to hospital back to the UK, whatever that may be. That was my speciality. We call it Aeromed, where you've got your RFDS over here. So I did 25 years with that, and my last.
Sorry, I do have to do a little plug because I actually do drink from a Royal Flying Doctor's mug. So there you go. Yeah,
I'll let you off. It just means I'll have to buy you an Air Force one now. No, so my last job in the Air Force was actually in charge of bringing back all the injured soldiers from Afghan, and Iraq and Bosnia and anywhere over the world where they've been injured. So we were the reception hospital. So we were receiving something like 220 casualties a month, relating from eye injuries to twisted ankles through to triple amputees, and organising their onward care. So basically, the patient literally was lifted out of a bed in the operational theatre and put in a bed in Birmingham in the UK, and literally their care hadn't changed an iota throughout the process. So it's that handover period. So that was fantastic. Best job I ever did, but the hardest job I ever did. And then went on from that to work on the London Olympics when I left the service, where I managed the whole of the London Stratford site, which was all the main 10 venues, looking after every aspect of medical operations, from first aid for the audiences through to treating the athletes in the background to emergency on-field stuff as well. I
was actually wearing my London 2012 t-shirt yesterday.
Beautiful.
Yes, I was just impressed it still fitted.
I wasn't brave enough to say that.
All right, so how did you make the transition from Air Force, London Olympics, now you're in sunny Perth?
Yep.
That's not only massive jumps from a job perspective, but from a continent perspective as well.
Yeah, well, I was very, very lucky that as a child I grew up here in Perth. I mean, I was born in the UK, but my parents came out as 10-pound poms. And I lived here for really my first sort of 9 years of my life, until they decided it was time to go home, which I went back kicking and screaming, as you can imagine. I didn't know the UK at the time. But when I retired, I'd done, again, some fantastic jobs, GP management, hospital management in London, but really just didn't know where to settle. And my wife, who's a sonographer, does all the ultrasound baby scans and things, was offered a position over here in Australia. If we were going to come back, as there's only the two of us, it was always going to be Perth, because that was my original home. And we got the visas and said, we'll keep them in our back pocket for that rainy day. And then lo and behold, the rainy day came when I lost my job. We had a change of, or they'd lost a contract, the company I was working for in the UK, and my position became null and void. So we said, right, just pulled the magic card out of the back pocket and off we went.
So how did you make the transition then from, from being, in the Air Force, London Olympics, to now being a life coach?
I had a lot of trouble, really. Actually, coming over here with quite a nice CV, to find a job over here in Perth in medical management, and really struggled. I just couldn't get in anywhere. I wasn't even getting through to interview stages. So took a couple of other jobs eventually to try and sort of get into the market, and still didn't really work to find out where I truly belonged. And life coaching is something I'd always looked at doing. And then literally about 18 months ago, an amazing college became available that they were doing a free open day to go and have a look and see what it was all about. Mm-hmm. My wife came with me, and we just sort of fell in love with the premise of how it worked, and I'm backed up with my life history and experiences. It was the perfect transition, really. And as I couldn't find my calling in the medical world here, this was the perfect natural transition, really.
Okay, so what exactly do you do as a life coach?
Very good question. Basically, it's listening to the client. That's the hardest part, which a lot of people don't do. People have conceptions of where someone needs to work or what their problem is or whatever. But when you actually listen to a client, and you listen to their story, and you listen to the language they use and the words they use and the emotions that are attached to those words, you can pick up almost the backstory of where their blockages are or where they're having trouble moving forward. And as a coach, it could be that their career's not working, their relationship's not working, they've got issues that from their childhood, really, that have come through, and they have a disbelief in themselves or the disbelief in their own voice. And it's working with them using their own language and their own tools, really, to try and give them the courage and the motivation and the tools to move forward in their life with purpose. So put them back on track and get those goals that they were originally always wanted to achieve, making them available again.
Okay, so I titled this "Selling the Invisible."
Yep.
Right, because when you're putting on some weight, it's easy to go and find a personal trainer,
yep,
or join a gym, or if your back's sore, you see a physio or a chiropractor. But these aren't like, I know that people can obviously get physical pain from not dealing with some of this stuff, but is not life coach one of those sort of mamsy-pamsy kind of like, how do you sell something to somebody who doesn't quite even realize that that's something that they need?
I think with mental health being the main issue that everyone's talking about, and the live wire at the moment, people are looking at how they're feeling. They've not necessarily ever taken that into consideration before. The physical, as you just said, is easy. You go to a gym, there's a million gyms, you go in, you don't have to say anything, you don't have to do anything, you can push a few weights, jump on a bike, and you can make improvements, whether they are structured with a personal PT or whether they're just what you're going to do within your own program. You can't necessarily do that from the mental and life coaching perspective. So people have this, they have a blockage, and they only know what they know. And they don't know how to move themselves forward. So they're stuck in the four walls that they've always been in. And there could be 15 doors that they keep missing as they go round and round and round to try and get off the conveyor belt. It's actually allowing them and using their own language. Like I said, it's not about me telling them how they need to improve their life or what they need to do with their life. this is almost allowing them to see that their goals at the end of the tunnel are achievable, and moving them down that path one step by step to get to that point where they're actually a little bit more content and happy, and they can actually see progress in their life.
Okay, so I guess the question that stems from them is, what's the difference between what you do and what a psychiatrist or a psychologist does?
If you go and see a psychologist or psychiatrist, can't get the words out.
It is early.
Yes. They're particularly interested in what's your problem. And they find a diagnosis and they find a label for you. And that label then gives you benefits, or that label gives you certain tablets. And that's really where it becomes a stagnant treatment. They manage the process, they manage the illness, but they don't actually look at moving you forward. Actually, okay, they've labeled it, but actually moving forward and having a progression in your career, progression in your life, and getting back outside that box of the label is not something that they do. Now, a life coach or a personal coach like myself, it should be working in harmony with a professional like that. So someone's been given the label, they've been given the medical treatment, because I don't diagnose, I don't treat, I don't prescribe. Yeah. And they should be given the help that they needed for the illness or the mental condition that they have at the time. But then they should be also offered the opportunity to work with someone now that's been sort of found to move forward. And we should be working in harmony as a team, really, to try and make that person not just an illness, not just a title, not just a label, but actually back to the original person that they always were. Okay,
so how do you market what you do? Obviously, this show's about marketing, so I do kind of have different.
I know. Marketing is one of those things that I have to be the proactive one to go out there and push myself into areas where I feel people have a need for me. Yeah. So for me, being, as you know, my history and my background is the military or emergency services, being a medical person within the military. So what I do is I do a lot on Facebook. I have my own website, I have my YouTube channel, I have my own business page on Facebook and Instagram as well. And I go out there and I will post related topics to a target population that I feel would need my services. So because I do with emergency services, there's quite a lot of groups that I belong to that are military or emergency services related, whether it be veterans helping veterans open talk, if you know what I mean, or whether it be a more of a PTSD framework. And when you go on there, I will post things that will spark conversations, spark interest, spark interaction, shall we say. But sometimes you'll go on there and you'll physically see someone who's struggling. They'll be putting up a post saying, I had a really shit day today, really need your prayers and help, guys. They might have 50, 60, 70 comments on there, but there's people that are also suffering. Yeah. And it's all like, I hear you, buddy, and we can do this, and you've got it. And that's not really helpful. So what I tend to try and do is, if I do see something like that, I'll try and take the conversation offline and maybe personal message them in the background to offer my support, but also offer, ask for some more professional questions in the background to get to the depth of what they're actually struggling with. Because I never say that within the post, what actually is hurting them or whatever. So I think, and a lot of people actually really love that forum where they can open up. And as soon as they know, from my perspective, that you're ex-military and you're a brother, and you've been there and you've worn the T-shirt and you can almost have seen through their eyes, you get the empathy and you get them to open up. A lot of the military lads find a lot of struggle going to some certain psychiatrists or counsellors who are superb counsellors, but as they've not seen through their eyes, they'll never tell the full story. Whereas with me, they can relate.
But how open are these guys? I know it's guys and girls. I know we just keep referring to guys, but it's guys and girls to reach out to somebody like you. Isn't there still a lot of stigma around it, or are you finding that's...
Well, I think because they belong to that group where they've labelled themselves anyway as having an issue, and they've put the post out there with saying, I'm not coping and I'm struggling. They are actually asking for help. The difference is on, say, a lot of the posts, a lot of the guys are offering support and compassion, but they're not offering any assistance or help or professional guidance because they're not trained like I am. Whereas if you can go in the background and you use the client's language back to say, whatever they've used to describe the way they feel, and you use that back to them, you're building rapport all the time. Building rapport, plus obviously stating who I am and my credentials as such, as I've been there and done it, and who I am and what I do at the moment.
Yeah.
They actually very much do wish to talk, and they do open up quite well. I even had some of the lads I've been talking to in America where their wives have come on because it's a family problem, and I've ended up talking to both of them. So I tend to lead from that and offering a little bit of value to then maybe booking an appointment with me, which we can do on Messenger, like an free introductory 45-minute chat, basically for them to see whether I fit them or they fit me, and we can work together to try and create a program together or a longer package to deal with their issue. And then we build into offering them from a sales perspective, then saying, well, I think that working with me for a 3-month period or just a 6-week session or might be suitable for you, and offer them the option then.
Look, as much as I try not to make my shows too COVID orientated, because it seems to be changing moment to moment. Yeah. Are you finding that there's been an increase for need for your services, or you are sort of starting to deal with people who are suddenly finding themselves unemployed, stuck in their house? Like Melbourne's ridiculous still.
Yeah, I think that yes, COVID has definitely created a greater need. What's happened is the fact people have now been confronted with their fears that they've been ignoring for many, many years. Yeah. Having losing their job, having the restricted money, being, as much as they love their partners, if you know what I mean, they've never spent 24 hours a day in the house with their partners and their kids and screaming, and no way out, no respite. Yeah. So it has brought up the major negative emotions, which has then triggered arguments. It's triggered anger to come up. It's triggered all sorts of emotions and fears and things that they've never had to deal with before. They've been avoiding. So yeah, it's created a greater need. But again, you've also got the counteraction there, the chicken and the egg of the fact that these people have lost their job and they necessarily don't have the money. So they're willing to talk, but when it comes to the payment side or working with someone, they're just not in a position at the moment.
Yeah.
But, so there's a lot of work that I have to do and doing at the moment where you can offer as much as you can offer, and you can offer support and you can be there, but actually people aren't necessarily taking up on the packages.
Yeah, but I guess this isn't something where you can do like a group session or things like that. It's because it is kind of one-to-one care, right?
Yeah, well, I've done some group sessions. I did early in the year and late last year, before COVID all started. Yeah, there's an amazing group that I belong to called the Australian Dads Network, because that's another thing of mine, helping dads with their relationships and with their children's relationships and their vision of what really a father should be, or a dad should be, or a husband should be. Yeah. Now, I did a couple of workshops for those guys. Again, literally trying to do more of a peer support group, allowing them to see the forum that they had, and they might not talk, but the person next to them has brought up a problem that's dear to their heart, and actually understanding that someone else is suffering, someone else who could be living 2 streets away has the same fears, the same worries, and they don't think themselves less of a man. And then obviously myself then bringing in a couple of pearls of wisdom. So you can have the open forum groups, but hopefully that would lead to, for me, a more one-to-one program with them afterwards, once they've built the trust and they understand the value of talking and the relief that they have of getting that problem off their shoulders by, open up discussion.
Okay. All right. But so you've talked a fair bit about your the Facebook groups, and I know you've obviously said that you reach out specifically to these people. Yep. Have you found any other strategies have also worked?
Yeah, I belong to an amazing group called NRG, the Network Referral Group. They've been fantastic. They contacted me and offered me a position. And I work technically up in the Joondalup area with them. That's where my base is. But again, if there is no other coach available in any of the other groups that they have, and they have about 40 odd groups up and down Perth, then I'm more than welcome to go along and pitch my services there. It was a little bit funny because I joined literally about 6 weeks before COVID hit, shall we say. So I had about 2 events where I could go along and say, hi, this is who I am. Before, literally, as we are now, we were on Zoom or we were online doing our pitches.
Yeah.
But that, funny enough, allowed me to meet far more people within the group and get my story across. And it's so funny how, because this is personable to everyone, and no disrespect to anyone who's a bookkeeper or a cleaner or a plumber or whatever, but there's a limit to how much they can spark conversation, shall we say, about their subject. Whereas once you put a pearl of wisdom out there in that forum, people just can't stop talking because they all have an opinion, they've all got a problem, and they can recognize themselves in what I've said. And it really does spark interest. And actually, I've actually picked up 2 clients in the last 2 weeks who actually belong to that group, who heard my pitch and said, you know what, I know someone you definitely need to talk to.
Yeah.
And that's been of great value to them and myself. So it's been, we've really helped each other.
So I guess like any business, word of mouth is still rampant and still works.
It is. They allow you to post in all their other groups, if you know what I mean. They have individual groups, but they have a generalized area where you can share your posts. Yeah. I've met so many people I would never have met who are not associated to my world within coaching, who now value my services. And I've got some amazing friends that really love what I do. And actually are promoting me because they know so many people themselves that could do with this, who are struggling, who are stuck in a rut, who have come out of a relationship and they're just sitting in their 4 walls, who are emotionally shut down at the moment. And they're pitching me without me having to pitch myself, which is fantastic. But they trust in my services because they've experienced what I've had to say and know that I'm coming from a point of truth.
Yeah. One of the topics that we did sort of touch on before the interview started was because I know, like, I've been to a physiotherapist and he turned around to me and went, oh, yeah, you should keep coming to me because I'll always find something wrong with you, which just irked me completely. And so I obviously never went back to that physiotherapist.
Yeah.
How do you, isn't the whole idea with your business that eventually your clients stop being your clients?
I don't think they'll ever stop because you build up such a rapport. I mean, I get to know things about them that they've not even told their partners.
Yeah.
It's their internal, real depth worries once you've built up that rapport. But anyone who is a good coach or a good PT, what you do is you study the person, you work with the person, you build rapport with the person, you build trust with the person, and you find out what works for them. And the idea is ultimately to, like you do with any of your own children, it comes a point where they have to go out the house and live their own life. But you've given them enough tools to self-manage. Doesn't mean that you'll never be there, like you as a mother. Your son will grow up and he'll have his own life, but you'll never stop being his mother. So the idea of a coach is to go out there, to give them the tools, let them understand to recognize when they're struggling, what they're struggling with, the emotions that are coming up, and they can almost pull out of their own toolkit now a set of tools or mechanisms or strategies that they can use to get themselves back to normal, if you know what I mean, or get back to be more balanced. But it doesn't mean that they still won't have those times when they're overwhelmed or that the strategies, something bigger has come up and they need more. So you'll always be on call. You'll always be available. And again, like I said, because you've got that rapport and you know their history, you don't have to start from scratch. All you're doing is topping up. And it's been the same with a PT and a gym. Someone has made progress, you've given them all the tools and the exercises that suit their body, that work with their body, work with their metabolism. But there comes a point where your body then changes and your body adapts and you need to move on because you hit that brick wall, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, or you plateau.
Exactly. So then you go back to your PT and you say, right, I've plateaued a bit. I want to move forward again with vigor. So I always say, I want to move people forward with purpose. And once they've achieved that one goal, I want them to come back to me and say, my new goal is this, and I want to help you to help me to get there. And that's what we work on.
Okay. How do you get past the male bravado about mental health?
Good question. There is a male bravado, but at the point where I tend to meet them, because I'm not going to pick people off the street and saying, can you tell me about your mental health problems? People are going to punch me, if they won't want to punch me anyway. But the idea is I'm putting myself in a forum where these people at least started to question themselves.
Yeah.
They've put the initial fishing hook out there as if to go, I'm not quite coping. And I'll see what tool or what person comes in with a piece of advice that I can relate to and take on board. That's why I take it offline, because people aren't going to open up to that next level. They'll put, I'm struggling. They'll put, I had a shit day. They'll put that, so much crap happened to me yesterday. I felt just want to cry.
Yeah.
They're not going to then tell you why. They're not going to tell you the emotion. So that's the bravado. But I think knowing that I'm a guy, knowing that I'm a coach, knowing that I'm ex-military, knowing that I'm a dad and I've been through divorce and I've been through cancer and I've got lots of history in my own life that I can relate, then they don't feel as if they're alone. They feel as if, oh, he's been there, or I've got an empathy with them because I've experienced myself.
But in those forums that you're talking about, I'm assuming that you're not the only life coach. I mean, sure, you're potentially the only life coach with as much experience and such, like, seriously, between cancer, military, divorce. Like, I feel like you've hit pretty well every single button. Yep. But you're not alone in that space. So how do you then differentiate yourself? No, I can't speak. Between you and other life coaches.
Again,
because it's a competitive market, man.
Oh yeah, it's hugely competitive. Hugely competitive, because people are looking at mental health now, and people are coming out who aren't qualified, who's saying, I'm a life coach. I've got the hypnosis and I've got the NLP as a backup to just being able to talk, let alone my life experience. But again, it's actually having the courage as a life coach and the decency and the professional ethics. Is I might not be the best person for them.
Yeah.
And I might refer to one of my fellow colleagues, someone I know that's gone through the same courses, and a friend of mine who would be better suited who is more ideally related to the client and serve them in a better way, because ultimately it's about the client.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I can't help them. Don't get me wrong. I can always help them, but it just depends on whether I'm the right person to help them. They might talk to 2 or 3 different people. Like everything else, you always shop around. Once you realize that a life coach might be your avenue of recovery or way forward. But I've got some amazing mates who I coach with, who I trust implicitly. And if I thought that honestly that they would be better suited to that person, I would move them on. And my wife is a life coach as well. So there can be some certain women, and I get on with a lot with women because I've worked in the medical world, and 90% of my colleagues have always been nurses, if you know what I mean. So I've been around that world as well. But there might be someone that I'm talking to that's female, and I say, do you know what, my wife would be better for you to talk to. And I'll quite happily cross-refer.
Yeah.
Because ultimately it's about the client. But by doing that, I feel better. I know the client's going to get the ideal person for them that's more appropriate. But actually, sort of professionally, they might refer me somebody else because of that decency that I've provided. You just have to take, what you're supposed to have will come to you. But as long as you're decent about it, it will come back in tenfold, I hope. He says, okay. I hope.
So given your background and, let's be frank about this, you don't have any marketing experience. You don't have any marketing qualifications. No. I'm assuming your life coaching training that you've done doesn't come with how to market your life coaching.
Actually, it does. The college that we belong to, we've got umpteen specialists within marketing. They offer some amazing webinars. It's the Life Coaching College, which is based over in Melbourne, and they actually have our website with them. Is fantastic. And again, throughout the COVID period, and funny enough, they come from Melbourne, so no one could come here to do the master's courses that I'm waiting for. But they have done a superb job of providing update courses, continuation courses, reminder courses, marketing courses, low-cost membership course, anything that you could do that would help your business. They've provided umpteen avenues for you to still be related, still keep a relationship with them, and they're always available on the end of a phone. We've got our own website with them and a lot of groups. And if you're struggling, or if you've got a client and you're not quite sure, or there's a technique that you haven't used for a while and you want a bit of clarity on before approaching the client and working with them the next day, you'll have 50 replies from fellow college students and mentors that will support you the whole way through. So they've been excellent, absolutely excellent.
So how else do you find out information about marketing and how to market your business?
From people like you, who's a friend of mine, from other NRG members, Paul McKenzie, which is an amazing friend of mine, people that have been in business themselves for a long, long period where I haven't. Obviously, my transition to be a sole trader, if you know what I mean, is new to me. Even though I've got many experiences, I've learned a hell of a lot in the last 18 months, I can tell you. But again, NRG itself offers so many online training courses where fellow people like myself would give a lesson on a specialist subject that would be of value to other traders. And other small business owners. And I'm actually doing one for them shortly that I'm preparing at the moment, because when you talk about life coaching and building a rapport and customers' objections, there's certain language, there's certain techniques within NLP that some of these small businesses have never heard. For me, it's basics. So when we were on Zoom recently, obviously, some reduced numbers some days. And so the leader of the group of the day would ask some other questions, leading questions. And one of them was, how do you handle objections with people? And when I started to offer some of the NLP and some of my coaching techniques, you could see everyone almost moving closer to the screen going, I need to learn this. I need to learn this. And they said, look, can you please do a half an hour webinar for us, because we don't know this shit. You only know what you know, and they may know their business, and they may be in a brilliant accountant, personal assistant, plumber, whatever it may be, but they've never had to talk language in that way that I do. So that's how we all serve each other within that group, and I've learned a hell of a lot from them as well.
All right. So how did you make that transition then? Like you just said about you're now suddenly a sole trader, right? You're suddenly now posting stuff on Facebook. You're suddenly posting stuff on YouTube, like really putting yourself out there. I know that there's a term that's used in sort of life coaching type spaces about imposter syndrome. And, how do you, we all know the fake it till you make it, viewpoint. But how did you overcome, I was nervous about doing my first podcast, and I've been doing marketing for 25 years. That's all I know. But how did you overcome that?
That's a lesson that I've had to learn. As much as you're a life coach and I've had all the life experience I had my own hiccups and my own disbeliefs in my own voice at times. My family were amazing. Very loving family that I grew up in. But again, I was exceptionally good at sport. That was my forum, and I won pretty much anything I ever went in for, whether it be cricket, rugby, netball, or even tiddlywinks, I had to win. But I was never allowed to talk about it at home. I had to win, but I was never allowed to celebrate my successes. So for me, it was a huge blockage I've had in my life of, as you've said, I've achieved a lot. You know my CV, and it's quite impressive, but I don't see it that way at times. It's just what I did in the job. But now, as a sole trader, having to go out there and almost put a light bulb on your head going, da-da, look at me, I'm a life coach, I'm the best thing since sliced bread, come and talk to me, is very, very difficult. I think having to be authentic, having to talk about what I can do and what I can't do, and knowing that to better serve others, I have to serve myself. So me putting myself out there and doing the YouTube channels and the videos, which are gradually coming along more now because I'm getting a bit more confidence. Being more confident in my story and having success with clients that I'm working with at the moment, to know actually I do have something to offer. I've changed that person's life, or I've made them really think of life in a different way, and they're so grateful. So now I have the confidence more that what I do, what I say, does benefit people. And by not putting myself out there, someone could be suffering. So it's given me that confidence, and the NRG itself, going in and doing all these Zoom calls, going out to venues and doing your elevator pitch, and then people wanting to talk to you more about your subject afterwards because you've sparked an interest, or they know of a friend, or even themselves that want to talk and say, I was thinking about that, but I never knew who to talk to. The more you talk about your subject, the more that you put yourself out there, the more that you grow into the profession, the greater your voice becomes, that, and that your value is real. And that's the lesson I've had to learn myself.
I think you touched on a really good point about being authentic. And I don't think it matters whether you're a plumber or a postman or a life coach. Like, if you're authentic in what you're posting up and what you're doing, then people will see that. Like, it's probably the biggest thing that I say to any of my clients, that what they're posting on social media or through an email or through any of these things, if you're not authentic about what you're talking about and you're not coming from a place of authority, people will see that. They'll see through that really quickly. And I guess that's highlighted even more for somebody in your profession. That's
right. I mean, I was working with a client not 2-3 days ago, like a bit of an emergency phone call, if you know what I mean. And it wasn't you. But I didn't think I got a word in the first hour.
Yeah.
But that's what she needed. But then actually the problem, although I didn't have her problem per se, actually I had a very, very similar problem that I dealt with. And actually then to bring that up, to be authentic, to say, yes, I've been there, I understand. I don't know your story and I'm not in your shoes, but I have been there and I went through that and I suffered. And this is how I came out of it with the tools that I've had and the things, the way I've changed over the last couple of years. I'm a completely different person to what I was 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
You could almost see the light bulb go on with the client as if to go, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
I'm not making this shit up in my head. Other people, and I said it worked well with the dads group because someone might not talk, but because 3 other people in the room did, and they had a problem that they could relate to, and they thought, I'm not the only one suffering. I'm not a bad dad. There are other people out there who don't feel competent or don't feel confident or are worried about how they're performing as a father. And that almost took the weight off their shoulders that they thought they were the only one in the world, and they thought that they were just the only shit person.
Do you find that dads, sorry to interrupt, but do you find that dads have that complex a lot? Like, I've noticed that, mum's like, she's a good mum, but dads...
Huge. And there's never really been a forum. I mean, if you look at it in the life coaching world, you'll find a million women out there that are going, women power, women whatever. But you don't find many men who are out there selling it in the same way. And women relate to that more, because you are looking for that, women empowerment, women this, blah, 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 which is fantastic. But there aren't that many forums. And that's why I'm starting, like I've worked within the dad's realm and now I actually do in the military realm, where people have this perception of the alpha that they are supposed to be. And that's built from what their perception was of their father as a father. And that was built on the way that the father of that one, the grandfather was. Life has changed. Perceptions have changed. Families have changed, but they still have this vision of how their father was, and they're not the same type of father. They don't have the control of the family. They don't have, the ultimate respect that man had maybe at the time, whether it was by fear or by hook or by crook or whatever it was. And actually now it takes 2 people to survive now, with mum and dad going out to work. It's a shared responsibility now rather than solely on the man as it may have been only 20, 30 years ago. But it doesn't mean that the ethos and the bravado of a man still thinks that he's the provider.
Yeah. There's almost a caveman mentality that's still like
inbred.
Yeah.
But it may change in the next generation because they'll see, like the kids of today will see the fathers of today sharing the responsibility.
Yeah.
and doing dual roles. But the parents of today are seeing their dads as they were in the 70s and 60s, that were the alpha males of the family, the matriarchs. So and the same with women, how women were originally at home and then a few got jobs, and now it's perceived that it's possible to have jobs.
Yeah.
It's a change of perception of roles. But actually getting a man now to understand that, and people are now talking. Men are now wanting to talk. Men are now doing yoga. Men are doing meditation. Men are doing workshops to go, like the Bali ones you and I have talked about before, go and do weekends away and, inspirational weekends. Men are going on those things. So the transition is happening. It's actually now allowing men more platforms and forums to have an availability to share their voice.
Yeah.
And once they do, they will start to find the relief of that. And it's not alpha to talk.
Yeah. I have noticed, like, especially, I don't know, since the Me Too movement, and now obviously there's a whole Black Lives Matter, I've actually had some of my male friends reach out and go, or, tell me like that they're now almost slightly nervous about how to like talk to women because they don't want to, and they're coming to me going, Lynn, how do I address certain matters when it comes to colour? Like what language am I allowed to use, or that's appropriate to use, or I should just direct them to you, really, shouldn't I?
Yeah, please. But no, I mean, even my wife and I have been together 18 years now. But when my marriage broke up the first time, and I almost got back out on the circuit, shall we say, because of my availability, you and I have talked about this. But I'd gone from in the 80s where I was, and I am, before what you say, I tried to be the gentleman because that's how I was brought up from my father. And that's the way I like to look after a lady or treat them like a lady. Honestly, after my failed marriage and going back out on the market, 15 years later, from a young 20-year-old to a mid-30s, oh my God, talk about aggressive. It was almost some of the women were caveman, it's like they were grabbing me by the arm and saying, right, back to my room. And it's like, whoa, hold on. What's your name? And the whole dynamic and it's changed so much. And now as a bloke, it's like, do I act as a caveman because someone wants that? Or do I be the gentleman? Or, it's a loss of role. It's a loss of identity. And it's just a transition we're going through. Because now it's 50-50. It might be the woman that goes up to the guy and starts chatting him up and asking him out and taking him home as a caveman. There's no rules anymore. And that's why it's so hard for people to find out where they fit in and what approach or technique is going to work with anybody.
Bit like marketing.
Yes. You just have to be genuine to the person that you're talking to at the time and see where it goes. Yeah.
So if you were going to give advice to somebody who wanted to start as a life coach, right, and what's some of the marketing lessons that you've learned that you would be happy to share?
I think if you're going to be a life coach, because again, like everything else, there are huge diverse fields of where life coaching can go and where you want to specialize. I think you almost have to know your public. You need to know who you're best going to serve, because that's going to be where you get your clients from. It's people, it may be a young girl who's 21, 22-year-old, or a young guy, don't get me wrong, who's 21 and 22 that wants to be a life coach. That's fantastic. But they then may appeal to people of that age, or it will be with that age group's problems that they wish to deal with, whether that be drugs or alcohol or relationships or parents and school and whatever. But they're not necessarily going to be dealing with some 42-year-old retired soldier. There would be no empathy or no rapport. So I think be realistic of who you want to serve and how you want to serve them, and base your life coaching on that. It doesn't mean that you can't generalize. People will come to you. But if you know what your story is and you have a story yourself to share, I think that's the biggest thing. Then you're going to be authentic. Just being a life coach, going out and doing X amount of weekend courses or whatever and saying I'm a life coach, but you've got nothing to say and you're reading from a book, you're not going to last very long. You have to have had the experience. And some people of that age have had huge stories, of struggles or relationships or family breakups or whatever they've gone through. So just be genuine to your clients and who you want to serve, and you will serve them if you're doing it from a genuine base.
So out of all of the platforms that you are currently using, such as Facebook, Insta, YouTube, what are you finding works best for you?
I think for me, it's Facebook, definitely.
Yeah.
I think Facebook, Instagram is very much more short, sharp. It's a picture sales. And I don't have a product that you can necessarily picture sale.
Yeah.
You can put a couple of lovely quotes out there, but no one really reads the story underneath. Very few people do. They like the picture and that's it. They're scrolling. Yeah. So that is a forum that I'm on, but it's not giving me any clients, but you still need a presence because it might drag them from that to my website or to my business page. Facebook is, like I said before, it allows you to prompt a question, ask discussions, take it offline, and then probe a little bit further and then go from there into a meeting, like an introductory chat before then offering them a sales. My website does the same because there'll be loads of links where it'll be stories. It will say my packages. It says what each thing I do is and what I stand for. But again, it will often ways back into book an appointment with me and everything else. So, and YouTube has now offered me, because I've started that, people listening to my story, listening to my words, and meeting me as a person, not just a couple of words on a script. So again, that's a new introduction to me. But again, all leading back to my Facebook page or leading back to my website, which will start discussion, because that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you find that you are posting, so you'll share your YouTube videos on your Facebook page? Are you finding any success when you're doing things like that?
You and I did an interview not long ago, which we did under a different forum, which was more coaching based and about my story rather than marketing. But that actually received great reviews and a lot of people watching it and commenting on it. But again, they got to hear what I could do for them genuinely without me selling. Yeah. So they then got to build a rapport. They got to understand me, to see if I was genuine, whether I fit for them or I don't fit for them, before them maybe wanting to come and talk to me on a one-to-one basis or approach me. And that's what I'm doing now with the YouTube and sparking conversations and almost having to put your own vulnerability out there to say, and we've all got it. I'm certainly not perfect. I've got loads of shit in my bag, if you know what I mean, that I carry along, but I'm dealing with it and I've dealt with it and I've had success. And this is what I can offer other people. So telling them where I'm struggling, they're moving that into how I got over it, and then where that's moved me to. People will now relate to that and say, do you know what? I had the same problem. Maybe this guy can help me. Yeah. And that's where the genuine and authenticity comes in.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Russell, do you have any questions? Because,